Welcome to day 15 of our study of the book of Ecclesiastes. The title of today's lesson is, Who Can Tell Man What Will Be After Him? Our reading comes from Ecclesiastes chapter 6, verses 7 through 12. All the toil of man is for his mouth, yet his appetite is not satisfied. For what advantage has the wise man over the fool? And what does the poor man have who knows how to conduct himself before the living? Better is the sight of the eyes than the wandering of the appetite. This also is vanity and a striving after wind. Whatever comes to be has already been named, and it is known what man is, and that he is not able to dispute with one stronger than he. The more words, the more vanity. And what is the advantage to man? For who knows what is good for man while he lives the few days of his vain life, which he passes like a shadow? For who can tell man what will be after him under the sun? You can file these under Great Predictions. Joe McKinley, contributing writer for Reader's Digest in an August 2021 article, listed some predictions about the future that didn't quite turn out the way the prophets thought. The president of Michigan Savings Bank warned Horace Rackham, lawyer for Henry Ford, that he needed to protect his money. The automobile is just a passing fad, a novelty, he said. The horse is here to stay. That 1903 prediction fell short by a freeway mile. Thomas Edison may have been a rather brilliant inventor, but when it came to seeing into the future, he lacked the vision. His prediction that everything in the 21st century will be made of steel. His words, the baby of the 21st century will be rocked in a steel cradle. His father will sit in a steel chair at a steel dining table. He didn't see the light on that one. John Philip Sousa warned the world about the menace of mechanical music when he wrote about the machines that brought music into people's homes. It will bring an end to amateur musicians. That was 1906. He surely would be singing a different tune today. Also predicted, electricity is just a fad. All women by the year 2000 will be over 6 feet tall. You will clean your home with a garden hose. And telephones will never catch on, especially those that act like computers. And TVs, they're not going to be a big thing. When it comes to the future, there are some who have been rather savvy about what is coming. But they are the exception, and statistics show that trying to guess the trends of the future can bring a fortune, but can also bring financial ruin if they are betting all they have on the whims of people's tastes. Then there are also the so-called psychics who make pretense of knowing what is going to happen. Jean Dixon is well known for her prognostications of future events. Remember when she predicted that World War III would happen in 1958? Or how about her prediction that Russia would put the first man on the moon? Or Richard Nixon being elected president in 1960? All her predictions were printed in bold letters for all to see well ahead of time, and people just couldn't get enough of her, even if she was wrong time after time. But remember how God declared if you could know if one was a false prophet? In Deuteronomy 18:21 through 22. And if you say in your heart, how may we know the word that the Lord has not spoken? When the prophet speaks in the name of the Lord, if the word does not come to pass or come true, that is a word that the Lord has not spoken. The prophet has spoken it presumptuously. You need not be afraid of him. So to say that Jean Dixon was a prophet would be false by biblical standards. But humans are wont to believe those who pretend to know the future. Look up Harold Camping and see how many he led astray. It is one thing to use economic indicators to give possibilities of what the economy might do in the next year. It is quite another thing to say one knows with certainty future events based on the stars or tea leaves or Ouija boards and such. Nobody can predict the future with absolute certainty on their own. That's the theme Solomon revisits in his writings here. In Ecclesiastes chapter 2 and verse 18 through 19, he writes, I hated all my toil in which I toil under the sun, seeing that I must leave it to the man who will come after me. And who knows whether he will be wise or a fool? Yet he will be master of all for which I toiled and used my wisdom under the sun. This also is vanity. And in chapter 3 and verse 22, so I saw that there is nothing better than that a man should rejoice in his work, for that is his lot. Who can bring him to see what will be after him? And still again in Ecclesiastes chapter 10 and verse 14, which we shall come to shortly, a fool multiplies words, though no man knows what is to be. And who can tell him what will be after him? Now here in chapter 6, Solomon again will reaffirm that what comes after us is largely unknown. Remember, once again, we have the advantage over Solomon, for we have the body of the Old and the New Testament for our perusal, while Solomon has the law and history, and not the whole of the Psalms at that point at his disposal. And those still shrouded in somewhat dimness until the light of the Savior shall come to reveal them. Perhaps the same question that haunted Job clings to Solomon's mind when Job asked in Job 14:14, if a man dies, shall he live again? And again in Job 19, verse 25 through 27, for I know that my Redeemer lives, and at the last he will stand upon the earth. And after my skin has been thus destroyed, yet in my flesh I shall see God, whom I shall see for myself, and my eyes shall behold, and not another. My heart faints within me. Solomon's mind is still consumed with that which is under the sun, or that which will happen on earth in the flesh. 1,000 years into the future, the resurrection will be clearly revealed. Yet, even then, it will be misunderstood and be confusing to some. Paul writes in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verses 12 through 14, now, if Christ is proclaimed as raised from the dead, how can some say to you that there is no resurrection of the dead? But if there is no resurrection of the dead, then not even Christ has been raised. And if Christ has not been raised, then our preaching is in vain, and your faith is in vain. Paul had encountered the Sadducees in his life, he himself being a Pharisee. We read of that encounter one time in Acts chapter 23, verses 7 through 8. And when he had said this, a dissension arose between the Pharisees and Sadducees, and the assembly was divided. For the Sadducees say that there is no resurrection, nor angel, nor spirit, but the Pharisees acknowledge them all. Some scholars think it is Solomon's obsession with this life only that further bolstered the Sadducees' belief in no resurrection years later. Solomon is right to ask these three questions in verses 11 and 12 of our passage today. Number 1, what is the advantage to man? 2, what is good for man? And 3, what will be after him? Remember his two questions from chapter 1? In chapter 1, verse 3, what does man gain by all his toil? And in verse 10 of chapter 1, is there anything new? This is the stuff of the philosophers' musings in age after age, even down to today, where the skeptics and scoffers still staunchly hold to this life and nothing more belief. Yet Solomon has a glimmer of hope beyond this life, which he will at last reveal at the end of his thoughts. Still, he has a long way to go here in Ecclesiastes before then. Have you thought about what is to come after your labors are finished here under the sun? And Lord willing, let's meet here again tomorrow for another study in the book of Ecclesiastes.